Welcome to KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. Today I'm going to show you how to use your leftover bones from your holiday roast turkey to make a really tasty and budget-friendly turkey bone soup. And this soup has a very nice, mild roast turkey flavor that's infused throughout the soup. But before getting started with the recipe, I just want to share a little story of how this recipe came about. When I was in high school, I had a really dear friend, and she and her family were some of the most amazing people I had ever met. They lived on a large farm where I spent a lot of time. My friend's mom was one of those ladies who was very budget-friendly and resourceful, who believed you shouldn't waste food or the ingredients to make recipes. So on Thanksgiving or any holiday where she served a roast turkey, and after most of the turkey meat had been eaten, and all that was left was the turkey carcass with a little bit of meat on it and the turkey wing tips. She would use this to make a soup or a stock. And this is how this recipe began. I hope you will watch this entire video and use the good ideas for making your bone broth soup. By the way, you can do the same thing with leftover roast chicken bones. Now, let's get started. As you can see on this table, I have assembled all of my ingredients. And as I said, today I'm going to be using my leftover turkey carcass in order to make this absolutely delicious soup. If you're wondering why there are no macros, it's for the same reason that when I made my chicken bone broth, it's really hard for me to calculate what the actual macros and micros would be for this soup, since I don't have a way of analyzing how much of each of the ingredients has infused into the water. But I assure you that the broth itself is very healthy, high in nutrient value and collagen. To start making this turkey bone soup, the first thing I get is a huge stock pot. This one is about 16 quart or 16 liter. You could also make this soup in a slow cooker, which I did in my chicken bone broth soup. This soup does take a little while to cook, and if you want to know, it can also be done in a pressure cooker. And in a pressure cooker, it would only take about 90 minutes. The first thing I do is I put my entire turkey carcass into the pot or slow cooker. If you don't have a really large pot and the bones don't fit in nicely like this, just separate the bones by taking the carcass apart so that they will all fit into the pot at the same time. Next, I cut the celery stalk into thirds and trim off the root end, which I discard. Put the celery stalk, including the pieces with the inner leaves, into the pot. Then toss in the bay leaves. Drop in a whole large tomato, a nice ripe one for best flavor, but if you don't have a large tomato on hand, you can substitute with ripe cherry tomatoes as I'm doing here. Then peel your onion and chop it into quarters and put the onion into the pot. In this instance, I prefer to use white or yellow onions. I also add my cilantro, but always remember to rinse your cilantro, but you could also substitute the cilantro with flat leaf parsley. Then the next thing I do is trim the ends of my carrot, scrape or peel them, cut them into pieces, and toss them into the pot. And here I have a handful of garlic cloves which I've peeled, and I'm just going to toss them into the pot. Now I'm going to season the soup. When I make my soups, I usually use the coarse Himalayan salt and whole peppercorns, not ground pepper. Next, I sprinkle in the dry oregano leaves and also add some thyme leaves. I want to mention that this thyme was grown in our garden. I cut off the stems, let it dry completely, and then stored it in my herb jar. And if you're wondering, herbs are extremely easy to grow either in an outdoor garden or in flower pots on your windowsill, or if you live in an apartment building or condo, on your balcony. Fresh herbs are really nice to add to any recipe. I next fill the pot with a lot of tap water, filled to about an inch from the top. And the last ingredient I like to add to my soups is vinegar. You can either use apple cider vinegar or plain white vinegar. And you use the vinegar because it'll help to draw the collagen from the bones. Now it's time to put the pot on your stovetop, which is set to high. Cook uncovered until the water begins to boil, and then let it boil for about 5 minutes. Then turn the element down to low, cover the pot with a lid, and let everything cook very slowly. Because I want to maximize the collagen from my soup, I let it cook for about 6 to 8 hours on my stovetop or in your slow cooker. I find that both work equally as well. It's just the volume. I use the stovetop method here because my stovetop pot holds more water and I can fit the entire turkey carcass in it very easily. Whereas my slow cooker is a bit smaller. There's not much more you have to do. All you have to do is occasionally check back, maybe every couple hours or so, to make sure that the volume of water hasn't decreased too much. If it has, just add more water to fill it to the original level and let it keep cooking. You can do this once or twice over the 6 to 8 hours, but I would recommend that the last hour or two you do not add any more water because you don't want to over dilute the flavor of the soup. And that's all there is to making this amazing turkey bone broth soup. Before continuing and straining the soup, I like to let it cool a little bit. When I'm straining, I also like to remove all the carrots, which I will use when I'm serving the soup. I also remove any meat that may still be on the bones, because I also put that in my soup when I'm serving it. However, the rest of the solid residue I just throw into the bin. I find that using my large stock pot, I get about 6 to 8 quarts or 6 to 8 liters of soup. And I can use this soup in a whole bunch of different recipes and as a base for some of my other soups. Here are some of the ones I have featured. My roasted tomato and red pepper soup, my keto Thai pumpkin soup, my keto cream of broccoli and cheese soup, and one of my favorites, cream of mushroom soup. All of these use a stock base. In fact, I will provide a link in the description box below for all of these soups, my keto soup playlist, and of course the written formatted turkey bone soup recipe. And the formatted recipe can be translated to the language of your choice. Here's a suggestion of how I like to serve my soup. I first cut up the carrots and add them to my bowl. Then I also add some of the leftover turkey meat, ladle the soup into the bowl, and then I like to top with a sprinkle of some of the grated mozzarella cheese. My mom used to add mozzarella cheese when I wasn't feeling very well, and it just feels like one of those amazing comfort meals. By the way, you can enjoy the soup right away, as I'm doing, or you can store your soup in freezer-safe containers and keep it for several months in your freezer. I hope that after watching this video, you will also be inspired to use your leftover roast turkey bones or roast chicken bones and make some delicious soup out of it. If you like this recipe and found it useful, I would really appreciate it if you give the video a thumbs up, leave me a comment, forward the channel link to a friend because word of mouth is the best way you can help my channel grow. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. I would be honored to have you as one of my subscribers. I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to watch my video. I hope you come back when I post my next video. Until then, have a happy, healthy day. Cheers!